Hi, my name is Rod Khleif, and I'm the host of the Lifetime Cash Flow Through Real Estate Investing podcast. And every week I interview multifamily rock stars, and we talk about how they've built incredible wealth for themselves and their families through multifamily properties. So hit the like and subscribe buttons to get notified every Monday when a new episode comes out. Let's get to it. Welcome to another edition of How to Build a Lifetime Cash Flow Through Real Estate Investing. I'm Rod Khleif, and I'm thrilled you're here. I know you're going to get tremendous value from the gentleman we're interviewing today. His name's Donato Satani, and he has forgotten more about real estate and project management than most of us will likely ever see, but I will not steal his thunder, so we'll let him tell you about it. Welcome to the show, buddy.
Thanks, Rod. Thanks for having me today.
Absolutely. So why don't you talk a little bit about your background? I mean, you've got this resume is very impressive and very long, and that's why I didn't try to attack it. So talk a little bit about your background in this exciting business.
Sure. Way back when I went to school for engineering, civil engineering, I came out of school, realized that I didn't actually want to practice engineering, so went to work in the construction industry in New York City. By a matter of just luck and raising my hand, I got put on the Yankee Stadium project when they were building the new Yankee Stadium. Cool. For any New Yorker, if you like the team or not, it was just a once in a lifetime opportunity. So I shipped myself up to the Bronx, cool. Which was a lot of fun. I think after that, I really realized in interacting with ownership that I wanted to go the ownership route, and went back to school to get a master's degree in development, and switched over to the owner side. And then from there, did some pretty cool projects. I got an opportunity to work on a 1,400-foot skyscraper in the middle of Manhattan, which was just a lot of fun and a huge learning experience. But I think every step of the way, it was just about knowing when to take the risk and take a risk to make a jump. And then finally coming into my own business. And again, it was just another risk and another jump.
Well, I mean, okay, well, you glossed over a lot in that, you've done some huge redevelopments. You worked on the Hudson Yards, you worked on Madison Square Garden, just project management on property on Park Avenue. And so has your role primarily been project manager in the development or the redevelopment, or talk a little bit about where you've spent the most time and your knowledge?
Yeah, well, I was working in, call it the corporate institutional real estate world. That's really what I was. I was a development project manager, is what they would call it. And I really grew into that role when I was working for a company, Maclo Properties. If you're really into real estate, I'm sure you've heard the name. And I went there to go help build his Crown Jewel project. It's a 1,400-foot tower. I got the hard hat right behind me still.
Oh, I see it there. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it had a whole ton of challenges and a whole ton of opportunities, right? We're building the tallest that's ever been built in New York City during that time. And we were also doing it with high strength concrete, which also hadn't been done. So there was just a huge learning curve for every single person working on that project. And It was one of those situations where everyone around you was pushing you, and you were pushing everyone around you. Otherwise, everyone knew this thing was never going to come together. But I think sometimes, that's the best way, right? No one knows exactly the path forward. And you got to dive in and just do your best, and you watch everyone else do their best, and you get amazing results.
That's a recipe for success whenever you've got that dynamic. And so how has that background helped you in, now you've got your DXE properties, you've acquired 500 doors. What markets are you in? But actually, before you do that, how has that background helped you with DXE properties and I'm assuming you're syndicating and asset managing and so on and so forth. Can you speak to that?
Sure. I think one of the biggest values and it has nothing really to do apples to apples with what I do today, but just working for some of these players in New York City, specifically Harry Maclo, and just seeing that when he had a vision, he was willing to put it all on the line and go for it. And he wasn't going to let literally anyone stop him. No one was going to get in his way. No one was going to tell him that his plan didn't work. So just seeing that and living through it for a whole bunch of years of my career, and being the person sometimes to say, hey, Mr. Macklow, like, I don't think we could do that. And he just look at you and be like, I didn't ask if you thought we could do it. Go get it done. And then you have to change your mind right on that spot because you want to keep your job, right? So then you have to go get it done, and you need to figure out a new way to, to do it all together. I think just bringing that knowledge and that attitude into your own business has helped us tremendously, more than, any one skill set, I'd say.
Yeah, no, that's a mindset right there, and that's what an incredible model or personality type to model in this business. It's get it done. I love it, and what an incredible opportunity that was for you to be around someone like that. That doesn't focus on the how. He just make it happen. Love it. So I know it's you and your partner, Josh. What markets are you in? And talk a little bit about, how you've, got your own thing going. Maybe a couple of, I know you've done some projects recently. Maybe dig into those a little bit as well.
Sure. So we mostly, we're from New York, but we mostly invest in the Southeast U.S. So we're in North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia predominantly. It's a far cry from what I used to do. We definitely want to be back in New York and be developing in New York, but we just don't think right now is the time. And we think the time is down there. So that's really why we're down there.
Are you developing, or did you buy value add? What
No, we're buying value add down there.
Okay.
I'd say if we were doing something in the New York market, we would be developing, just because my hands-on experience. But down there, we're not willing to take the risk in a market where we don't really, understand the players and the zoning that well. So we do value add in those markets.
Okay. And talk about maybe the first deal you guys did, where it was, how you found it, how it's worked out. Just maybe take us through, a little bit of that first or second, whatever deal. It doesn't have to be the first one, but one of your deals and how it came together and what the reposition is and so on and so forth.
Sure. No, great. I'll talk about a deal that we actually did last year.
Okay.
So we were putting the deal together in February of last year. It was going just great. Total repositioning value add project in Augusta, Georgia, about 100 units.
We've got one there too. That's really funny. That's really funny.
We'll have to compare notes.
Actually, on the South Carolina side, but in Augusta.
Okay, on North Augusta, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's right, North Augusta. Yeah.
So, everything was going just great. We're super excited about it, getting great debt quotes. We're really coming together with the plan for how we're going to go about this project. And then, as we all know, coronavirus hits, right? So at first we're thinking, hey, this isn't going to be so bad, but maybe we'll just add some reserves. And then, day by day went by, week by week went by, and then we went into a lockdown up here in New York, and we had a whole slew of investors that said, hey, we're with you with this, but we also had a whole slew of investors that were a little bit nervous, not knowing what was coming up. So there was a huge challenges. It was a fluid environment, right? And we had to have faith in our project, and we had to double down on the faith in our project, because right now, the whole country looked like it was going into lockdown, and people were going to put money into this project, and no one knew what really was going to happen. So we really had to take a step back and say, hey, are we going to pull out of this project, try and get our deposit back, or are we going to push forward? And we made the collective decision that we're going to push forward. We really believe in the business plan. And although there will probably be short-term hiccups, long-term, it's where we want to be. And we still think it's a good deal.
Okay. And so you closed on it, everything. You in the midst of your reposition now, or Yeah.
Yeah. So we closed on it. We hit the ground running. We still went forward with the renovation program. We've redone all the exteriors already. We've done about 30 of the 104 units interior wise. And, I'd say we're definitely filling up the apartments. It's going a little bit slower than we would have anticipated a year ago when we were looking at the project.
Sure.
But all in all, I think everyone is happy that we, pushed forward and went through with the project.
Nice. The next question I want to ask you is, I kind of want to circle back just because, being around someone like Makhlouf is really such a treat. Can you kind of speak to, I don't, obviously nothing negative. I just kind of want to, I think he's a great example of the type of mindset a person needs to have to push through in real estate. And maybe you can speak to some of the qualities that you saw, or how maybe you could speak to the impact it had on you and how it's affected your, ability to move forward, if you're comfortable doing that.
Sure. I'd say there's 3 words that describe him.
Okay.
And I truly believe this. Whenever I used to talk to my dad about him after work, I used to say the same thing. I'd say ultimate optimist, and then visionary.
Love it.
And that's the only way you could possibly get such a big project done in New York City. You got to be the ultimate optimist because everyone's going to tell you no. And then you also have to be a visionary, because if you're just going to try and build everything that's already there, right? The market in New York City, especially during that time, has already priced that in. So there's no profit to be made, right? It's a very efficient market. There's so many players in the market. So you need to be a visionary in order to figure out, hey, what do people want next? It's kind of like, Steve Jobs and Apple.
Right.
And that's really what I learned. One of the things I just brought up, Steve Jobs and Apple, right. He did do the cube. That is Harry Makhlouf's project on Fifth Avenue. What everyone knows is the Apple Store, right? And that design, whenever you walk into an Apple Store today, that was Steve Jobs and Harry Makhlouf coming together and creating this Apple Cube on Fifth Avenue. And it ended up making Harry an enormous amount of money, but it all had to do with the vision of, hey, we're going to put retail where no one else thinks it could go, because it was a plaza before it was the Apple Cube. And by the way, we're going to convince like the best computer maker and retailer to put that retail mostly underground. And we're just going to have a light on top with a glass box.
Very cool. So that was his vision, and he brought it to Apple.
Yeah. So it's a really cool story, but Harry had this vision. He brought it to Apple, and supposedly Harry unveiled this cube, and Johnny Ives was at the meeting, and Johnny Ives literally had like the same idea as Harry of how to make this space activated.
Nice. Yeah. So how does that translate into what you're doing now? Talk about how that's, if you can associate with any of the, either the traits, the thought processes, the personality, the methodologies that translates into, what you're doing now with Josh.
Yeah, I think it's more so than what we're doing, but what any value add type operator is doing. You have to have the vision to see what a project can be, right? And in some cases, you're making a market for that project. So you really have to have the vision and the fortitude to see it through. When we're looking at a building and we're buying it at, a sub 5 cap, right. You're never going to make any money just buying it that way. So you need to really be able to transform it into something else. And you need to be able to think a little bit outside the box on what you can do to attract the tenants and see that business plan through. So I think it's not what we do necessarily, but what everyone does that is successful in this space.
Yeah. Agreed. So What's next? Are you looking for more assets in those markets? I would assume the answer is yes.
Yeah, being in those markets, we're very bullish on the markets. We're always diving into demographic data. We're keeping an eye on what employers are doing. And, more so just seeing what's going on in our hometown of New York.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen so many people pull out of New York City. We've
Right.
even seen people pull out of the suburbs. Everyone's, maybe wishfully a little bit, but people are talking about coming from up in the New York area down into the South, just
Right.
because of quality of lives and jobs and weather, right?
Right.
So we're doubling down on this strategy, and we think it's going to be a very successful one, down the line.
Agreed. Yeah, we are too. I totally agree. So talk about your team with Josh. What roles have you guys? Do you guys each play to your strengths? Talk a little bit about that, because this business is a team sport, and I love it. When I come across. Well, let me rephrase that. Yeah, I'll back into what I want to say after you describe your what you do in that relationship and what Josh does. Is it different things, or do you guys both do the same things?
So we very much started off doing everything together and both doing everything. I think we wanted to just see where things fell out, and we had the time to do it. So now it's been 3 years now, and we have seen a falling out of each person's responsibilities, and we're kind of gravitate that way naturally, right? So I'd say he's definitely acquisitions. He loves putting his acquisition hat on. He loves talking to brokers,
Right.
and he just loves being in front of them. Whereas I love the project management and the design part of what we're going to do to a new property. But I'd say, even 10 minutes before I got on with you today, we were just looking at new marketing for a new building that we just purchased in December. And I was like, Josh, I got to get on with Khleif. I'm excited about it. You just make the decision, and let's go forward. So sometimes we do flip flop based on time, but I think inherently we just trust each other.
Yeah.
So that's how we move forward.
That's a critical component. Now, do you do the analysis? Are you the more the analysis? I mean, you're an engineer, so I have to assume that's the case, but I don't want to assume anything.
I love playing with the model.
Right.
We love updating our model and figuring out new tricks to be able to model things quicker. But I would say both of us, we actually, when something comes across our desk, one of us takes it and we bring it through the initial, and then everything that has legs, then the other person goes into it and basically
fantastic.
Stresses the model to say, hey, where are we falling out on this? If both people go through that process, then we make an offer.
Oh, that's a great strategy. That's a great strategy, and that's how successful teams do it. I've found that on many successful teams, like you just described. I mean, again, you bring the engineering background, the project management background. Josh maybe more the maybe not outgoing, as it were, because you're very outgoing as well. But really, some of the most successful partnerships I see are someone that's analytical with someone that's out there building the relationships so but that's awesome that you guys are the framework that you're utilizing is very, very effective, where you've got two sets of eyes on because this business is primarily empirical. Obviously, it's primarily numbers. So all the other things being equal. So love it. So let me ask you this. What are talk about, and it doesn't have to be with DXC, talk about a failure or a real, when you really got your nose bloodied on a deal, and what happened, what was the lesson, and what did you take away? If you can think of something, I'm sure there's probably quite a few from the project management side, but what's a doozy, that you can share with us?
I would say,
I know I didn't prepare you for this.
Yeah, I'd say, I love when people look at this question and take a half failure and make it into a success. So I'm not going to do that because I think that's fake. I'm going to think of something where maybe we really failed, or
Yeah.
So I'd say maybe at 432 Park Avenue, we're building this super tall tower, and we're getting ready to open up the building. And right before you're getting ready to open up the building, you're final signing off all of your elevators. And during that time, all of a sudden, we came into the fall season, and elevator cables, 1,400 foot length elevator cables, started snapping.
Oh,
And
God.
it wasn't so just to be clear, it wasn't the cable that actually holds the elevator up. It's what's called a traveler. It's
Okay.
all the electrical cabling that goes
Gotcha.
alongside it to power the elevator.
Wow.
So what was happening is we're, testing these elevators out, and we're running these things up the building at like 30 miles an hour, because that's how fast these things go.
Right.
And all of a sudden the emergency brakes would come up, and it would feel like, because the gravity difference happens so fast, it feels like the elevator's falling, but
Wow.
it's just you're stopping going up so quick.
Wow.
So that was a huge challenge. And the failure there was just that no one anticipated the sway of the building during the wind with the sway of the elevator cables. And it's something called resonance, right? So as the building is swaying, elevator cables are swaying, and they just so happened at when the wind was right to hit the same resonance, and these cables would start whipping around an elevator shaft, and they're 1,400 feet in length. So you can imagine,
Wow.
the damage they could do, and the weight of these things going around and around and around.
Wow.
I think, it was a long, hard process to solve it, and there was a lot of internal disbelief and discussion about how we got to this place and how to get out of it. But eventually we had to take the steps and totally revamp these elevators.
Wow. How long did that delay the project?
So what happened was we probably delayed opening the building 3 or 4 months because of it. And then we brought the elevators online much more slowly because of it. So we were closing on units much slower than anticipated.
Oh, I'll bet that went over really well.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, when you're building such a luxury product, you
Right.
can't, you can't go into it halfway, right? Because these clients are just going to get so upset. So we needed to figure out the right solution. We finally did. And I know for a fact the new skyscrapers going up in New York City literally all took the same technology that we had to come up with and use them in their buildings going forward.
Wow.
So it's a
quite an
cool
example.
outcome, but it was very, very painful.
It was no fun at the time. I can imagine. No. Wow. That's probably the most dramatic example I've ever had for that answer. So let me ask you this, you obviously want to build your own portfolio. You've done it for other people. You're well on the way. What are sacrifices you've had to make this happen? I know we had to stop the tape a minute ago because your baby was making some noise upstairs or in another room. And so, talk about that a little bit.
Sure. So I think one of the things when you're going into your own business and you finally make the leap, you start getting phone calls all over the place. From people that you never thought you'd talk to before about owning their own business. And you realize that a lot of people do have the dream. They just don't know how to go about it.
Right.
And they always ask me, how'd you do it? Why'd you do it? And I think one of the things is you have to be frugal where you can be. You obviously have
with your time, you mean? Yeah.
Yep. Frugal and your money.
And your money. Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Because you have to put the money into the business, right? So especially before going out into your own business, if you have a corporate job, you need to really understand that, hey, the money's good right now, and I'm leaving all of that to go try and, eventually make more money than you were making before, obviously. But
sure,
there's going to be a period of time where you don't. So it was really a conversation with my wife and I, and a joint family decision, call it, of, hey, everyone around us is, buying the brand new house, or, buying the apartment in New York City, or, buying the sports car.
Right.
We're not going to do that. We're not going to go to Europe. We're going to go to my parents' place in Florida, or we're going to go on a short ski weekend.
Right.
But we're not going to go on these crazy vacations because we're going to go build a business. And I really do look at my wife as a partner like that. And, she agreed, and believe me, she's more frugal than I am.
Nice.
But yeah, I think that's the biggest sacrifice that we've seen.
Well, so you went to the money, but what about the time with her and with your child? How do you manage that?
Yeah, I think that, in all honesty, the time aspect was a little bit easier for us than the money aspect, because working in New York City, I was working ungodly hours at all times. Friday night, got to get something done. Sorry, we're not going out to dinner. Saturday morning, got to get something done. Sorry, we're not going to soccer. Whereas now, I'm still working a lot of hours, but it's on my time. So I could, make sure I run up for dinner at 6:00, and then I'll get back on the computer at 8:00, 9:00, because I know it's my own deadline that I need to fulfill. I think the biggest challenge would be the traveling, though.
Yeah.
And that's something that you just can't make up. So there's always a conversation around with the wife around, hey, what would be best for you? If I could go this week, or this week down south, I need to go, at some point in the next 3 weeks, you choose, and I'll book my flight. And I think that works pretty well, because it gives the significant other the flexibility and the choice, rather than, hey, I'm going tomorrow. I think it goes.
I like
over
that.
A lot well.
That's a real part. That's a real partnership. I like that. So, one or two final questions. Was there an aha moment in your progression here? I mean, you're a young guy. I mean, I can see I've got socks that are probably have a decade or two on you, but so was there a defining moment in this? I mean, you've got this incredible background, the engineering, and then you've done all these big projects. But at what point did you have an aha? And it's like, you know what? And maybe the aha, and I don't even want to put it in your mind what that aha was, but does any answer come to mind for that question?
Yeah, I know exactly when it was.
Okay.
It's still crystal clear in my head. So in 2013, I took my wife and I's wedding money, and I went and built my own condo project up in Westchester, New York, while I was working full time. It was very difficult to manage both full-time job and this. But I did it in 2015. I sold out all the condos, and I was just super proud and happy about it.
Yeah.
And then when I had a kid, I got a promotion at work, and kind of put the whole be my own boss on the back burner.
I see.
But it kept nagging at me, and just eating away at every bit of my existence. Finally, I told a buddy of mine, and I said, hey, let's get lunch today. I need to bounce some things off you. And I just was like, hey, I don't know what it is. I'm so unhappy at work. What's going on here? And he's like, here's what we're doing. And next week we're going to go out with this guy, Josh, that we both knew. He just started his own business. You need to quit. And he's like, you need to quit. Screw this corporate stuff. You know you could do it. I know you could do it. Let's talk to Josh. He just went out on his own a year ago, and let's see if we can make something happen. So I just got super excited, and something went off in my head. Sure enough, I went out with Josh that night, and my buddy James, and by the end of the night, Josh was just like, let's just start the company together. My company's new. We'll just rename it into whatever we want to come up to it together, and we'll go off on this journey together, and we'll do it. So I got home at like 1 o'clock that night. And I told my wife, and she's like, go to bed. You drank too much.
Oh, no kidding. No.
So I was like, honey, I'm telling you, tomorrow morning, I'm going to be rip roaring, and we're going to talk about this. And sure enough, tomorrow morning, I talked about it. The next day I talked about it. That weekend I talked about it. And finally she was just like, you're really serious about this? I was like, yep. And she was like, let's do it.
Well,
and
nice.
that was it. But it was being unhappy where I was, and
Right.
just talking to a friend that
Right.
Just like, you got to get out of this.
But the support from your wife is so critical. And you just don't know how much value you just added to probably tens of thousands of my listeners, because, they're in that same place and wondering about time. And guys, you've got to get that support from your significant other. Let them see your passion. Let them, feel that. And when they do, you'll be able to influence them to get behind you. And that's he or her, this is non-gender specific, obviously, in this conversation, guys. But the point is, when you've got that support and that framework behind you, you're unstoppable. And as evidenced by your story here, Donato. So, well, listen, this is probably not where you thought this conversation was going to go, but I try to direct it towards where I feel my listeners need the most help. And it's definitely in the questions that I asked as it related to time and building team and the mindset, because, if you listen to any of my podcasts, Donato, you'll see that I really believe 80 to 90% of this is mindset and psychology. Only 10 to 20% is the real estate knowledge. Yeah, we could have dug deep on project management or due diligence but that's the easy stuff. It's actually taking action with what you learn and pushing through and having that support like you have that makes all the difference. But listen, I appreciate you being on the show, my friend, and taking time. And it was definitely a pleasure to meet you.
Thanks so much for having me. And agree, it's you can learn the skills. It's the mindset that's going to make it happen.
Rod, I know a lot of our listeners are wanting to take their multifamily investing business to the next level. Now, I know you've been hard at work helping our Warrior students do just that using our ACT methodology, which is awareness, close, and transform. Can you explain to the listeners how they can get our help?
You bet. Guys, we've been going nonstop for 3 years, building an amazing community of like-minded people. And our coaching students, which we call our Warriors, have had extraordinary results. They've purchased thousands and thousands of units. And last year, we did over 1,000 units with our students. And we're looking to grow this group and take it to the next level. We're looking for people who want to follow a proven framework that's really step by step, and then leverage our systems and network to raise equity, to find and close deals, and to build partnerships nationwide. Now, our Warrior community is finding success in any market cycle. So if you're interested in finding out more about how you can become more of our incredible network and take advantage of the incredible opportunities that are coming very soon, apply to work with us at mentorwithrod.com or text CRUSH to 41411. That's mentorwithrod.com or text CRUSH to 41411.